The dinner rush at Crimson Heights was in full swing, and Jasmine Carter's feet were killing her. She'd been on the floor since 11 that morning, covering for Maria, who called in sick again, and now it was pushing 8 in the evening. The restaurant was packed with the usual crowd of investment bankers, tech executives, and old money types who dropped more on a single bottle of wine than Jasmine made in a week. "Table 14 needs their check," the hostess called out as Jasmine passed the front station. "Got it." Jasmine grabbed the leather check presenter and weaved through the crowded dining room, her practiced smile firmly in place. 26 years old, and she'd been waitressing for nearly a decade now. Started at a diner in the Bronx when she was 17, worked her way up to fancier and fancier places until she landed here at Crimson Heights. The tips were good. The clientele was demanding, and every dollar went straight into the savings account she'd opened for Terrence's college fund. Her younger brother was a freshman at Howard University now, living his dream while she worked double shifts to keep him there. Their mother had passed away 14 months ago, cancer eating through her body faster than the doctors predicted. The medical bills had eaten through everything else: Jasmine's nursing school savings, the small life insurance policy, the emergency fund their mother had scraped together over 20 years of working 3 jobs. But Terrence was going to graduate. He was going to have the life their mother wanted for both of them. Jasmine would make sure of it, even if it meant working doubles until her legs gave out. She delivered the check to table 14 with a bright smile, collected the signed receipt with its generous tip, and was heading back to the kitchen when she noticed the commotion near the front. Marcus, the manager, was practically vibrating with nervous energy as he spoke to a tall man in an expensive dark suit. The man had the look of private security, the kind of subtle but unmistakable presence that said he could handle any threat that came his way. "The entire VIP section has been reserved," Marcus was saying. "Everything is prepared exactly as requested." Jasmine's coworker Destiny sidled up beside her. "Girl, you see who's coming in tonight?" "No idea. Some big shot." Destiny's eyes went wide. "Some big shot? Try the biggest. Word is it's some Korean businessman, mega rich, mega private. The kind of rich where nobody even knows exactly what he does, you know what I mean." Jasmine knew what she meant. Crimson Heights attracted all types, including the ones whose money came from places you didn't ask about. "Who's working VIP?" Jasmine asked. "You, apparently. Marcus just told me to switch. He wants the best up there tonight, and you know I can't keep my mouth shut when I get nervous." Jasmine sighed. VIP meant better tips, sure, but it also meant more pressure, more demanding clients, more of everything that made this job exhausting. Still, she couldn't say no. The money was too important. "Fine, let me just finish up my tables and I'll head over." By the time Jasmine made it to the VIP section, it had been transformed. Extra security stood at the entrance, their eyes scanning constantly. The lighting had been dimmed to create a more intimate atmosphere. Fresh flowers had been arranged on every table. And then the party arrived. There were 6 of them in total. 5 were clearly security or associates, hard-faced men in suits who moved with military precision. But the 6th was different. He was tall, maybe 6 feet, with black hair swept back from a face that could have belonged to a model or a movie star. High cheekbones, sharp jaw, lips pressed into a thin line that suggested he rarely smiled. He wore a charcoal suit that fit him like it was made specifically for his body, which it probably was. Everything about him screamed money and power, from the platinum watch on his wrist to the way the other men deferred to him without question. But it was his eyes that caught Jasmine's attention. Dark, intense, cold in a way that made her shiver despite the warmth of the restaurant. Those were the eyes of someone who had seen things, done things, things that regular people couldn't imagine. He was dangerous. She knew it in her bones, the same way she'd learned to recognize danger growing up in the Bronx. You developed instincts when you came from where she came from. You learned to read people, to spot the ones who meant trouble before trouble found you. This man was trouble wrapped in a $10,000 suit. Marcus appeared at her elbow. "Jasmine, you're serving them tonight. Whatever they want, they get. Do not mess this up." "Who is he?" Marcus's face went pale. His name is Jun-Ho Park, and that's all you need to know, just keep him happy. Jun-Ho Park. The name meant nothing to Jasmine, but the fear in Marcus's voice told her everything. She straightened her apron, took a deep breath, and approached the table with her best professional smile. Good evening, gentlemen. Welcome to Crimson Heights. My name is Jasmine, and I'll be taking care of you tonight. Can I start you off with some drinks? Most of the men ignored her completely, scanning the room with practiced vigilance. But Jun-Ho Park looked up, and for a moment, their eyes met. Something passed between them. Recognition, almost, though they'd never met. A spark of something unexpected in those cold, dark eyes. Jasmine felt her heart skip, which was ridiculous. She'd served hundreds of wealthy, attractive men. None of them had ever made her feel like she'd been struck by lightning. "Scotch," he said. His voice was low, smooth, with just a hint of an accent. "Macallan 25 neat, for the table." "Right away, sir." As she walked to the bar, Jasmine could feel his eyes on her back. She told herself she was imagining it. The evening proceeded with surprising smoothness. Jun-Ho Park and his associates spoke in low voices, switching between English and Korean. They ordered food but barely touched it. The tension at the table was palpable, though Jasmine couldn't determine its source. She kept their drinks filled, cleared plates efficiently, and maintained a professional distance. Every time she approached, she felt Jun-Ho's gaze on her, tracking her movements with an intensity that should have been unsettling but somehow wasn't. At one point, she reached across the table to retrieve an empty glass, and her arm passed close to his shoulder. He inhaled slightly, and she could have sworn she saw his expression flicker, that cold mask slipping for just a second. "Is there anything else I can get you, Mr. Park?" she asked. The hint of a smile. "You know my name." The reservation was under Park. "Yet you addressed me personally." He tilted his head, studying her. "Most servers simply call me sir. They're too afraid to use my name." Should I be afraid? The question was out before she could stop it. Jasmine internally cursed her mouth, which had always gotten her into trouble. But Jun-Ho Park didn't seem offended. If anything, he looked intrigued. "That depends," he said slowly. "Are you easily frightened?" "Not particularly." "No." His eyes swept over her face, assessing. "I didn't think you were. There's something about you, Jasmine, something different." Before she could respond, one of his associates leaned in to whisper something urgent in his ear. Jun-Ho's expression went flat, all trace of warmth vanishing. He gave a curt nod and turned away from her, dismissing her from his attention completely. Jasmine retreated to the server station, her heart pounding harder than it should have been. What was that about, and why did she care? She shook her head, trying to clear it. Rich men flirted with waitresses all the time. It meant nothing. He'd be gone in an hour and she'd never see him again, and that was fine. That was exactly how it should be. The night wore on. Jasmine served other tables, checked on the VIP section periodically, counted down the minutes until her shift ended. She was exhausted, her shoulder aching from an old injury that flared up when she overworked herself. It was nearly 10 o'clock when she noticed the man at the bar. He'd been there for a while, nursing a drink, but something about him had changed. He was sitting differently now, his body angled toward the VIP section. His right hand was inside his jacket. Jasmine's blood went cold. She'd seen that posture before, years ago, when she was 14 and witnessed a shooting outside her apartment building. The shooter had stood just like that in the moments before he pulled his weapon. Casual, unremarkable, and then suddenly deadly. She looked at the VIP section. Jun-Ho Park was leaning back in his chair, engaged in conversation with one of his associates. His security team was focused on the entrance, on the other diners, not on the bar. The man at the bar stood up. Time slowed down. Jasmine saw him reach into his jacket, saw the glint of metal, saw him turn toward Jun-Ho Park with murder in his eyes. She didn't think. There was no time to think. Her body moved on pure instinct, years of survival reflexes kicking in. "Get down." The scream tore from her throat as she launched herself toward the VIP section. Junho's head snapped up, his eyes going wide as he registered the threat. His security was already moving, but they were too far away. The gunshot was deafening in the enclosed space. Jasmine felt the impact before she felt the pain. Something hot and terrible tearing through her shoulder, spinning her around, dropping her to the ground. Screams erupted around her. More gunshots, glass shattering, bodies moving. She tried to breathe, but her lungs weren't working right. The ceiling lights blurred above her, spinning in lazy circles. Someone was applying pressure to her shoulder, someone else shouting orders. And then Junho Park's face appeared above her, his cold mask completely shattered. She'd never seen anyone look so shocked, so horrified, so completely undone. "Why?" he demanded. "Why did you do that?" She wanted to answer, but her tongue was too heavy. The pain was really hitting her now, waves of it crashing over her body. She was going to pass out. She knew the signs. "Stay with me," Junho commanded. "Don't you dare close your eyes, help is coming." But her eyes closed anyway, and the last thing she saw was his face, that cold, dangerous face, twisted with an emotion she couldn't name. Then there was only darkness. If you're watching this right now, please hit that subscribe button. This story is going to take you on a journey you won't forget, and I need to know you're riding with me. Drop a comment and tell me what city you're watching from. It really means everything to me when you engage, and honestly, your support is what keeps these stories coming. Don't scroll past this, just 1 second to subscribe, like, and comment. Thank you, my great family. Now, let's continue. Jasmine woke up in a room that definitely wasn't a hospital. The bed beneath her was too soft, the sheets too silky, the air too clean. Hospitals smelled like antiseptic and industrial cleaner. This room smelled like fresh flowers and expensive cologne. She tried to sit up and immediately regretted it. Pain exploded through her shoulder, and she gasped, falling back against the pillows. "Don't move," the voice came from somewhere to her right. "You'll tear your stitches." Jasmine turned her head slowly, carefully. Junho Park sat in a leather armchair across the room, watching her with those intense dark eyes. He'd changed clothes at some point, trading the formal suit for a more casual black sweater and slacks. He looked tired. He looked like he hadn't slept. "Where am I?" Her voice came out rough, scratchy. "A private medical facility in Queens. You've been unconscious for 16 hours. 16 hours. Jasmine tried to process that. She remembered the restaurant, the man with the gun, the sound of the shot. She remembered throwing herself in front of a stranger and feeling the bullet tear through her body. Why had she done that? She'd asked herself that question 1,000 times over the years when she thought about that moment, and she still didn't have a good answer. Instinct, maybe. Stupidity, probably. "The assassin?" she asked. "Dead." Junho's expression didn't change. "My security eliminated him immediately after he fired." "Oh," she didn't know how to feel about that. Relieved, horrified, both. "You saved my life." Junho leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "That bullet was meant for my chest. If you hadn't warned me, if you hadn't moved when you did, I would be dead right now." "I just reacted. I saw him going for a gun and she trailed off. "I didn't really think about it." Most people would have run, would have hidden, would have done anything except throw themselves in front of a bullet meant for a stranger. Jasmine didn't know what to say to that. He was right. It was crazy. She'd risked her life for a man she didn't know, a man who was clearly involved in something dangerous and probably illegal. "The doctors say you were lucky," Junho continued. "The bullet went through your shoulder cleanly. It missed the major blood vessels, missed the bone. You'll need physical therapy, but you should make a full recovery." "That's good." She looked around the room again, taking in the expensive furniture, the artwork on the walls, the window showing a view of unfamiliar city buildings. "When can I go home?" Something shifted in Junho's expression. A hardening, a closing off. "That's complicated." "What do you mean, complicated?" "I want to go home. I want to see my brother. I want to go back to my life." The man who tried to kill me was sent by a rival organization. Junho's voice was calm, controlled, but there was steel underneath. They were trying to start a war. Because of your intervention, you've been identified as someone connected to me. But I'm not connected to you. I was just doing my job. They don't care about the truth. They care about what they saw. A black woman threw herself in front of me and took a bullet meant for my heart. In their eyes, you're mine now. You're a target. Jasmine's blood ran cold. That's insane. That's the world I live in. He stood, moving toward her bed. Up close, she could see the exhaustion in his face, the tension in his shoulders. Your apartment in the Bronx has been under surveillance since last night. If you go back there, you'll be dead within 24 hours. You can't know that. I can, I do. He stopped beside her bed, looking down at her with those unreadable eyes. I'm moving you to my penthouse in Tribeca. You'll be safe there under my protection until this situation is resolved. I'm not going anywhere with you. Jasmine tried to sit up again, ignoring the pain. I don't know you. I don't know what you do or who these people are or why they're trying to kill you. I just want to go home. That's not possible. The hell it isn't. Junho's jaw tightened. You don't understand. The people who sent that assassin, they're not going to give up because their first attempt failed. They're going to try again. And next time they might come for you first, use you to get to me. Then tell them I'm nobody. Tell them I was just a waitress who made a stupid decision. It doesn't work that way. His voice was cold now, flat. In my world, debts matter. You saved my life. That creates an obligation I cannot ignore. Whether you want it or not, you're under my protection now. Jasmine stared at him, rage and fear battling inside her. This wasn't fair. None of this was fair. She'd been trying to survive, trying to make enough money to keep her brother in school, trying to get through each day without falling apart. And now, because of one instinctive moment of insanity, her entire life was being torn away from her. What about my brother? She demanded. He's at Howard University. He doesn't know anything about this. He'll worry when he can't reach me. I'll make arrangements. What kind of arrangements? Security, protection. If these people find out about your connection to him, he could become a target too. The thought of anyone hurting Terrence made Jasmine's chest tighten. He was just a kid, really. 19 years old, studying business, dreaming of starting his own company someday. He had nothing to do with any of this. I want to call him. I need to tell him I'm okay. Junho shook his head. Any contact could be traced, could put him in danger. For now, it's better if he doesn't know where you are. You can't do this. Jasmine's voice cracked. You can't just kidnap me. I'm not kidnapping you. I'm keeping you alive. He moved toward the door, his shoulders rigid. Rest now. The doctors will check on you in a few hours. Once you're stable enough to travel, we'll move to the penthouse. And if I refuse? He paused at the door, not turning around. Then you'll die, and your brother will probably die too, because they'll use him to confirm you're no longer useful to me. He finally looked back, and there was something almost like regret in his eyes. I'm not asking you to trust me. I'm asking you to survive. He left without waiting for a response. 24 hours later, Jasmine stood in the living room of Junho Park's Tribeca penthouse, staring out at the Manhattan skyline. The view was incredible. All of downtown spread out below her, the Hudson River gleaming in the afternoon sun, the Statue of Liberty a tiny green speck in the distance. She'd lived in New York her entire life and never seen the city from this angle. It was like looking at a completely different world. Which she supposed it was. The penthouse was huge. 3 bedrooms, a gourmet kitchen, a library, a home office, more space than she'd ever seen in any apartment. The furniture was all modern and expensive, blacks and grays and chrome. There were very few personal touches. No family photos, no artwork that seemed meaningful, nothing that gave any indication of who Junho Park really was. Her shoulder throbbed beneath the bandages. The doctors had changed her dressings before she left the medical facility, given her prescriptions for antibiotics and pain medication, warned her to take it easy for the next few weeks. She was wearing clothes that someone had bought for her, since everything she owned was back at her apartment in the Bronx. Soft yoga pants, a loose sweater, expensive slippers. Everything fit perfectly, which meant someone had taken the time to figure out her sizes. It was thoughtful in a way that made her uncomfortable. Jun-ho had been called away on business almost immediately after bringing her here. He'd introduced her to the security team that would be stationed in the penthouse around the clock, shown her to her room, and then disappeared. She hadn't seen him since. Fine by her, the less she saw of him, the better. But the hours crept by, and the anger that had sustained her started to fade, replaced by something worse. Fear, loneliness, grief for the life she'd lost. This morning, she'd been a waitress with a plan. Work hard, save money, get Terrence through college, maybe finish her nursing degree someday. Simple, achievable. Now she was a prisoner in a stranger's penthouse, a target of people she'd never met, cut off from everyone she loved. She pressed her forehead against the cool glass of the window and let herself cry for the first time since her mother's funeral. The first week was the hardest. Jun-ho was rarely there. He left early in the morning and returned late at night, if he returned at all. When they did cross paths, he was polite but distant, treating her like a guest he was obligated to host rather than a person he'd uprooted from her entire life. His staff was the same. A housekeeper came twice a day, a cook prepared meals that Jasmine barely touched, security guards rotated through shifts with military precision. They were all respectful, professional, and completely unwilling to engage in anything resembling normal human conversation. By the third day, Jasmine thought she might lose her mind from the silence. She explored the penthouse, more out of boredom than curiosity. The rooms were all immaculate and impersonal, except for one, Jun-ho's private library. It was smaller than the other rooms, tucked away at the end of a hallway she'd assumed led nowhere. Bookshelves lined every wall, filled with volumes in English, Korean, and other languages she didn't recognize. She found philosophy texts, classic literature, books on architecture and design. There was a comfortable leather chair in the corner, worn from use, and a small table with a half-finished cup of tea that had long gone cold. This was where Jun-ho spent his time, she realized. This was the only room in the whole penthouse that actually felt lived in. She pulled a book from the shelf at random. Marcus Aurelius, Meditations. The margins were filled with handwritten notes in elegant script. Some in English, some in Korean, all clearly made by someone who'd read this book many times and thought deeply about its contents. It didn't match. The cold crime boss with bodyguards and expensive suits, reading Roman philosophy and filling notebooks with his thoughts. It was like two different people inhabiting the same body. She put the book back and continued exploring, but she couldn't stop thinking about those notes. On the fifth night, Jasmine couldn't sleep. The pain medication made her drowsy during the day, but did nothing to help at night. She lay in the dark for hours, staring at the ceiling, before finally giving up and wandering out to the main living area. The lights were off, but she could see someone moving in the kitchen. She froze, heart pounding, before realizing it was Jun-ho. He was cooking. Actually cooking, not just reheating something or ordering takeout. He had vegetables laid out on the cutting board, a pot simmering on the stove, and he was moving through the kitchen with the ease of someone who knew exactly what he was doing. She must have made a sound, because he looked up suddenly, and their eyes met across the darkened room. "Couldn't sleep?" he asked. "No," she stepped closer, drawn by curiosity despite herself. "I didn't know you cooked. One of the few skills I have that doesn't involve violence." There was something almost like humor in his voice. "Sit, I'll make you something." She should have refused, should have gone back to her room, maintained the distance that kept her safe. But she was tired and lonely, and the smell of whatever he was cooking was making her stomach growl for the first time in days. She sat at the kitchen island and watched him work. "It's called doenjangjjigi," he said, not looking up. "A Korean stew. My mother used to make it when I was a child. It's comfort food." "Your mother's still alive." "She lives in New Jersey with my younger sister, Naomi." He added something to the pot, stirred. "I don't see them as often as I should." "Why not?" A long pause. "Because every time they look at me, they see what I've become. and every time I look at them, I remember what I could have been." Jasmine didn't know what to say to that, but something in his voice, a rawness she hadn't heard before, made her want to understand. "What could you have been?" He turned off the stove, began ladling the stew into bowls. "An architect. I was studying at Columbia when my father died, 1 semester away from finishing my degree." "What happened?" "He was murdered." Junho set a bowl in front of her, then sat across the island with his own. "A rival syndicate decided they wanted our territory. They killed him to send a message. I was 27 years old, and suddenly I was responsible for everything he'd built, for everyone who depended on our family." "So you took over?" "I had no choice. My mother, my sister, hundreds of people who worked for my father, they all needed someone to protect them, to lead them." He picked up his spoon but didn't eat. "I never wanted this, but want doesn't matter when people's lives depend on you." Jasmine thought about Terrence, about dropping out of nursing school to pay their mother's medical bills, about working double shifts until her feet bled so he could have the future he deserved. "I understand that," she said quietly. He looked at her then, really looked at her, and something shifted in his expression. "Tell me about your life before all this." So she did. She told him about growing up in the Bronx, about her mother working 3 jobs to keep food on the table, about Terrence being born when she was 7 and becoming the best thing that ever happened to their family. She told him about nursing school, about the dream she'd had of helping people, about watching that dream slip away when the cancer came. "I was 1 semester away too," she said with a bitter laugh. 1 semester from finishing, and then everything fell apart. "I'm sorry." "Don't be, it's not your fault." "No, but I'm the reason you can't go back to that life now." He set down his spoon, his expression serious. "I meant what I said before. I have resources. I could pay for you to finish your degree once this is over." "I don't want your money." "It's not charity. It's compensation for what my world has taken from you." "It still feels like charity." Jasmine pushed her half-finished bowl away. "I've worked for everything I have, everything. And now I'm sitting in a penthouse I didn't earn, wearing clothes someone else bought, eating food someone else cooked. I feel like I'm disappearing." Junho was quiet for a long moment. Then he stood, came around the island, and gently touched her chin, tilting her face up to meet his eyes. "You're not disappearing," he said. "You're surviving. That's what people like us do. We survive even when everything around us is burning. And then, when the fire dies down, we rebuild." His touch was warm. His eyes were warm too, she realized. Not cold at all, not when he let his guard down. Warm and deep and full of something that looked almost like understanding. "Your shoulder," he said, his fingers trailing down to hover over the bandage visible at her neckline. "Does it still hurt?" "Sometimes." "May I?" She nodded, not trusting her voice. He moved behind her, carefully lifted the edge of her sweater to expose the bandage. His fingers were gentle as he checked the dressing, so gentle she could barely feel them. "It's healing well," he murmured. "The doctor will be pleased." "Junho." He stilled at the sound of his name. "Why do you care so much? About me, about my shoulder, about any of this? You could just keep me locked in a room somewhere until the danger passes. You don't have to cook for me at 2 in the morning." He was quiet for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. Then his hands dropped from her shoulder, and he stepped back. "I don't know," he admitted. "But when I saw you fall, when I saw the blood," he shook his head. "Something broke in me, something I didn't know could still break." Their eyes met again, and the air between them crackled with tension, with possibility, with the terrifying potential of something neither of them had expected. "Get some sleep," he said finally, stepping back. "We'll talk more tomorrow." He walked away, and Jasmine sat alone in the kitchen for a long time, trying to make sense of what had just passed between them. 3 weeks. 3 weeks of living in the penthouse. 3 weeks of slow healing and careful conversations, and something building between them that neither would name. Junho had assigned her a personal bodyguard named Diego Martinez, a stocky Puerto Rican man with kind eyes and a quick smile. He was nothing like the other security guards, willing to actually talk to her, to treat her like a person instead of a package to be protected. "He's not what you think, you know," Diego said one afternoon as they sat in the living room playing cards. "The boss. What do I think he is? A monster, a criminal, someone who chose this life because he wanted power." Jasmine shrugged, focusing on her cards. "I don't think that." "Good, because you'd be wrong." Diego laid down his hand, a winning flush. "I've been with him for 6 years, watched him take over after his father died, watched him try to hold everything together. You know what he did first thing?" "What?" "Shut down the drug trade. Completely. His father had been running heroin through the ports for years." Junho said no more, said he wasn't going to profit off people's addictions. Jasmine looked up, surprised. "I didn't know that." "Most people don't. It cost him millions and it made a lot of enemies. But he did it anyway because he thought it was right." Diego gathered the cards to shuffle again. "He's not perfect. He's done things that would make you sick, but he's trying to be better than what he inherited. That counts for something." Jasmine thought about that conversation for days. Thought about the philosophy books in the library, the notes in the margins, the way Junho's eyes went soft when he talked about his mother and sister. Thought about the man who cooked comfort food at 2 a.m. and checked her bandages with gentle hands. She was starting to see him differently, and that terrified her. One night, she confronted him about the debt. She'd learned from Diego that Junho had been paying off her mother's remaining medical bills, had quietly arranged for round-the-clock security for Terrence in D.C., had been making her problems disappear without ever saying a word to her about it. "You had no right," she said, standing in his office doorway. "That was my debt, my responsibility." Junho looked up from his computer, his expression unreadable. "It was handled." "That's not the point. You can't just fix my life without asking me. I'm not a project, Junho. I'm not some problem to be solved." He stood, moving around his desk toward her. "I wasn't trying to." "You were. You've been treating me like a child since the moment I woke up in that medical facility. Making decisions for me, controlling what I can do and where I can go, throwing money at everything like that makes it okay." "I was trying to help." "I don't want your help." She was shouting now, weeks of frustration boiling over. "I want my life back. I want to see my brother. I want to go back to work. I want to sleep in my own bed in my own apartment. I want to stop feeling like I owe you something I can never repay." Junho's control finally cracked. "You don't owe me anything. You saved my life. If anything, I owe you." "Then let me go." "I can't." He was close now, close enough that she could see the pain in his eyes. "Don't you understand? If you leave, if something happens to you, I'll never forgive myself. I've watched too many people die because I couldn't protect them. I won't add you to that list." "That's not your choice to make." "Then help me make a different one." His voice dropped, ragged with emotion. "Tell me what you need. Tell me what would make this bearable and I'll do it. Anything. I need you to stop pretending this is just about keeping me safe." The words came out before she could stop them. "I need you to admit there's something else going on here." The silence stretched between them, heavy and charged. "There is," Junho said finally. "I can't stop thinking about you. You haunt every moment of my day. When I'm working, when I'm supposed to be focused on survival, all I see is your face. All I hear is your voice. Junho, your fearlessness, your defiance, the way you look at me like I'm not a monster." He reached out, touched her cheek, so softly it was almost not there. "You make me feel things I thought died when I entered this life, and it terrifies me." She should have pulled away, should have maintained the distance that kept her safe. Instead, she kissed him. It was explosive, desperate, hungry in a way she'd never experienced. His hands tangled in her hair, her arms wrapped around his neck, and for a perfect moment, nothing existed except the two of them and the electricity between them. Then reality came crashing back. The door burst open. Vincent Chen, Junho's right-hand man, stumbled in with panic on his face. "Boss, we have a situation." Junho pulled away from Jasmine, his expression shifting instantly from passion to cold focus. "What is it?" Volkov's made his move. He's grabbed Lisa Chen, the daughter of your ally in Philadelphia. He's demanding you surrender yourself in exchange. Jasmine watched Junho's face harden, watched the warmth drain out of his eyes, replaced by something ruthless and calculating. Prep my team. We leave in an hour. It's a trap, Vincent warned. Obviously, but I can't abandon Kim. He's been loyal for 20 years. Junho turned to Jasmine, his expression softening slightly. Diego will take you to a safe house upstate. You'll be protected there until this is resolved. You're walking into a trap. I know. You could die. I know that too. He moved toward her, cupped her face in his hands. But some things are worth dying for. Loyalty, honor, protecting the people who trust you. What about protecting me? Something flickered in his eyes. Pain, maybe, or regret. That's why I'm sending you away. Whatever happens to me, you'll be safe. She wanted to argue, wanted to scream at him for being so stupid and noble and willing to throw his life away. But she could see in his eyes that his mind was made up. Promise me you'll come back, she whispered. I can't promise that. Promise anyway. He kissed her instead, deep and fierce and full of everything he couldn't say. Then he pulled away, and the cold mask slid back into place. Diego, get her out of here. He was gone before she could say goodbye. The safe house was in the Catskills, a rustic cabin hidden deep in the woods. Diego, along with 2 other guards named Parker and Mitchell, drove her there in an armored SUV that night. Jasmine couldn't stop thinking about Junho, about the kiss, about the way he'd looked at her before he left, like he was memorizing her face, like he might never see her again. She tried to watch the news on her phone, but there was nothing about a confrontation in Philadelphia. Either it hadn't happened yet, or it was being kept quiet. He's going to be fine, Diego said, reading her expression. The boss is tough. He's survived worse than this. Has he? Diego's hesitation told her everything. The first night passed without incident. Jasmine barely slept, startling at every sound from the woods outside. By morning, she was exhausted and irritable, packing the cabin like a caged animal. The second night, everything went wrong. Parker received a phone call around midnight. He stepped outside to take it, was gone for about 10 minutes, then came back in with a strange look on his face. Everything okay? Diego asked. Fine, just my girlfriend. But something felt off. Jasmine noticed it first, the way Parker and Mitchell kept exchanging glances, the tension in their shoulders. She caught Diego's eye and saw that he'd noticed it too. She was in the kitchen, reaching for a glass of water, when she heard the click of a safety being released. Don't move. Parker's voice was ice cold. Either of you. Jasmine turned slowly. Parker and Mitchell had their guns drawn, aimed at Diego. What the hell is this? Diego demanded. Sorry, brother. Better offer came along. Parker shrugged. Volkov's paying triple what the boss pays, and he's going to win this war. Might as well be on the winning side. You piece of. Parker fired. Diego dove sideways, the bullet grazing his arm. He rolled, came up shooting, took out Mitchell with 2 quick shots. Jasmine grabbed the knife from the kitchen counter and threw herself behind the island as gunfire erupted around her. Diego was hit. She saw him go down, blood spreading from his chest, but he kept shooting, kept fighting. Parker advanced, gun raised, ready to finish him off. Jasmine moved without thinking. She grabbed Diego's backup gun from the floor and fired, hitting Parker in the shoulder. He spun, shocked, and Diego used the distraction to put 2 more bullets in his chest. Parker crumpled. The cabin fell silent. Diego, Jasmine scrambled to his side, pressing her hands against the wound in his chest. Stay with me, stay with me. Get out of here, he gasped. There could be more. The front door exploded inward. Jasmine raised the gun, ready to fire, but froze when she saw who was leading the assault. Vincent Chen, with a team of Junho's men. Clear, one of them shouted. Vincent rushed to Diego's side, took in the scene with sharp eyes. What happened? Parker and Mitchell, Jasmine said. They turned, They were working for Volkov. Vincent's expression went dark. "Get Diego to the hospital, now." He turned to Jasmine. "You're coming with me. There's a new safe location in Westchester." "What about Junho?" The silence that followed was the worst sound Jasmine had ever heard. "The operation in Philadelphia went bad," Vincent said finally. "The building where they were supposed to meet, it exploded. We found the boss's car destroyed, but no body." No body means he could be alive. Or it means there wasn't enough left to find. Jasmine's legs gave out. She collapsed against the wall, unable to breathe. Not Junho, not after everything. Not after she'd finally let herself feel something for him. "We're not giving up," Vincent said. "We're still searching. But right now, my priority is keeping you safe." Those were his orders. He made me swear before he left that no matter what happened to him, you would be protected. He helped her to her feet, guided her out of the cabin, into another armored vehicle. The drive to Westchester was a blur of grief and shock and desperate hope. Alone in her new room, surrounded by guards she didn't know, Jasmine finally let herself fall apart. She cried until there were no tears left, until her throat was raw and her eyes were swollen. Junho couldn't be dead. He couldn't be. She refused to believe it. But as the hours passed with no word, hope became harder and harder to hold on to. 3 days of silence. Vincent had taken over operations, trying to hold Junho's organization together while hunting for the mole who had fed information to Volkov. The security around Jasmine had tripled, but she barely noticed. She moved through each day like a ghost, going through the motions of eating and sleeping without actually being present. On the 4th night, her phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. "Trust no one. Vincent is the betrayer. Get to Grand Central Terminal, track 34 tomorrow at noon. Come alone. Jay." Jasmine's heart stopped. Jay, it had to be Junho. He was alive. He had to be alive. But the message said Vincent was the traitor. That didn't make sense. Vincent had saved her life at the cabin, had been coordinating the search for Junho, had seemed genuinely devastated by his disappearance. Unless it was all an act, unless Vincent had been playing them from the beginning. Jasmine spent the night going over everything she knew. The assassination attempt at the restaurant, the ambush in Philadelphia, the traitors at the safe house. Someone high up in Junho's organization had been feeding information to the enemy. If that someone was Vincent, it would explain a lot. But what if this message was a trap? What if someone was using Junho's name to lure her out? She didn't care. If there was any chance Junho was alive, she had to take it. The next morning, she faked a headache, waited for the shift change, and slipped out through a bathroom window. She used the emergency cash Diego had given her to take public transportation into the city, constantly checking over her shoulder for anyone following. Grand Central Terminal was crowded at noon, tourists and commuters filling the main concourse. Jasmine made her way to track 34 and waited, her heart pounding. Noon came and went, nothing. She was about to give up when someone grabbed her arm. "Don't scream, don't draw attention, just come with me." It was a young woman, Asian, maybe mid-20s, with Junho's same dark eyes and sharp cheekbones. She was wearing a baseball cap and oversized jacket, trying to blend into the crowd. "Who are you?" "Naomi Park, Junho's sister. Please, we don't have much time." Naomi led her through the station, down a series of service corridors, out a back exit where a car was waiting. They drove for what felt like forever, eventually ending up in Chinatown at a narrow building above a noodle shop. "He's upstairs," Naomi said. "He's hurt, badly, but he's alive." Jasmine took the stairs 2 at a time. The room was small and dimly lit, makeshift medical equipment scattered around, the smell of antiseptic thick in the air. And there, lying on a narrow bed, barely conscious, was Junho. He looked terrible. Burns covered half his face, bandages wrapped his torso, and his breathing was labored and painful. But his eyes were open, and when he saw her, something like peace washed over his features. "You came." She was at his side in an instant, hands checking his pulse, his temperature, cataloging his injuries with the nursing knowledge she'd never forgotten. "You're an idiot. You should be in a hospital." "Can't." Vincent has eyes everywhere. He tried to sit up, winced in pain. He's the traitor. He's been working with Volkov the whole time. The assassination attempt, Philadelphia, all of it. "Why didn't you tell someone?" "I didn't know for sure until the explosion. Vincent set it up, meant to kill me and take over, but I got lucky. Blast threw me clear." He gestured weakly at his injuries. "Mostly clear, anyway." Jasmine's hands were shaking. With relief, with fury, with the overwhelming need to keep him safe. "What do we do now?" "Vincent is meeting with Volkov tomorrow night, a warehouse in Red Hook. They're going to finalize their takeover." Junho's eyes met hers, and she saw the resolution there. "I have to be there. I have to end this." "You can barely stand." "Doesn't matter." "It matters to me." She grabbed his hand, squeezed it tight. "You almost died. You're going to walk into another trap, and this time you won't be lucky. I can't." Her voice broke. "I can't lose you, Junho." He reached up with his good hand, touched her face. "I'm already dead if Vincent wins. My mother, my sister, everyone loyal to my father. He'll eliminate them all. I can't let that happen, even if it costs me everything." Jasmine looked at him, this broken, stubborn, impossible man who had turned her life upside down. And she made a decision. "Then I'm going with you." "Absolutely not." "You don't get to decide that." She set her jaw. "You need all the help you can get, and I'm not sitting in another safe house, waiting to find out if you lived or died. If you're going to that warehouse, so am I." "Jasmine." "Don't argue. You won't win." For a long moment, he just stared at her. Then, incredibly, he smiled. A real smile, warm and full of something that looked a lot like love. "Okay," he said. "Together, then." The warehouse in Red Hook was a massive structure on the Brooklyn waterfront, all rusted metal and broken windows. The kind of place where bad things happened and nobody asked questions. Junho had spent the last 24 hours preparing. Naomi had reached out to loyalists within the organization, men who suspected Vincent but had been too afraid to act. Diego had discharged himself from the hospital against medical advice, insisting he wouldn't miss this fight. Together, they'd assembled a small team of fighters they could trust absolutely. But they were still outnumbered. Vincent had been consolidating power for days, and Volkov's men were professionals. If this came down to a straight fight, they would lose. So they needed a different approach. "I'll be bait," Jasmine said during the planning session. "They think I'm important to you. If one of your loyalists pretends to capture me and deliver me to Vincent, it'll draw them both out." "No." "It's the best option." "I said no." "And I said you don't get to decide for me." Jasmine stepped forward, took his hand. "I'm not afraid, Junho, and this plan gives you the best chance of getting close enough to end this." He looked at her for a long moment, every objection written on his face. Then he exhaled. "I hate this." "I know. If anything happens to you." "It won't. You'll make sure of it." The night of the operation, Jasmine was driven to the warehouse with her hands bound, a convincing captive. The loyalist pretending to deliver her was a man named Steve, one of Junho's oldest associates who had known his father. The warehouse was lit by industrial floodlights, casting harsh shadows across the concrete floor. Vincent was there, looking satisfied and smug, along with Volkov and over a dozen armed men. "Well, well," Vincent said, as Steve shoved Jasmine forward. "The waitress who started all this trouble. You've been surprisingly difficult to find." "She was at the upstate location," Steve lied smoothly. "Took some doing, but I got her out." Vincent studied him for a moment, then nodded. "Good work. Volkov, this is the insurance I mentioned. She's valuable to Junho, or she was. Since he's dead now, I'm not sure what to do with her." "Use her to flush out the remaining loyalists," Volkov suggested. His Russian accent was thick, his eyes cold. "Anyone still attached to the Park legacy will come for her." "My thoughts exactly." Jasmine stayed silent, playing her part, waiting for the signal. It came as Junho's voice echoing through the warehouse speakers. "Surprise! I'm harder to kill than you thought." The lights cut out. Chaos erupted. Gunfire, shouts, bodies crashing into each other in the darkness. Jasmine dropped to the floor, rolling away from the line of fire, hands working frantically at her bonds. Steve had given her a small knife, hidden in her sleeve. She cut herself free, grabbed a fallen gun, and pressed herself against a concrete pillar, trying to make sense of the battle around her. Muzzle flashes illuminated frozen moments. Diego taking down 2 of Volkov's men, Junho moving through the darkness like a ghost despite his injuries, Vincent screaming orders that no one could hear. Then the emergency lights kicked on, bathing everything in red, and Jasmine found herself face to face with Vincent. He grabbed her before she could react, twisted the gun from her hand, pulled her against him as a human shield. His own weapon pressed against her temple. "Junho," Vincent's voice echoed through the warehouse. "Show yourself or I kill her." The gunfire died down. Slowly, Junho emerged from the shadows, his gun raised, his face a mask of cold fury. "Let her go, Vincent." "Why, so you can kill me?" Vincent laughed bitterly. "I don't think so. You know what your problem is. You're soft. You always were. Your father knew how to be ruthless, but you—" He shook his head. "You're weak." "Mercy isn't weakness. It's a choice. It's naivety, and it's why you were always going to fail." Behind Vincent, Jasmine saw movement. Volkov, wounded but still mobile, was raising his gun toward Junho's back. She reacted on instinct, stomped hard on Vincent's foot, dropped her weight, rolled away. Vincent's shot went wide. Junho spun and fired, hitting Volkov's center mass. Diego emerged from nowhere to put 2 bullets in Vincent. And then it was over. Vincent fell. Volkov collapsed. The remaining enemy fighters surrendered or fled. Junho stood in the center of the warehouse, swaying on his feet, his gun still raised. Jasmine ran to him just as his legs gave out, catching him before he hit the ground. "You're okay," she said. "We did it, it's over." "Jasmine," his voice was fatting. "Stay with me, just stay with me." Sirens in the distance. Help coming. She pressed her hands against his wounds and prayed to anyone listening that she hadn't saved him twice just to lose him now. The private hospital in Connecticut was quiet at 3 in the morning. Jasmine sat beside Junho's bed, holding his hand, watching the steady rise and fall of his chest. He'd been in and out of consciousness for 2 weeks, fighting infections from his burns and complications from the gunshot wounds. More than once, the doctors had warned her to prepare for the worst. But Junho was stubborn. He'd always been stubborn. Tonight, for the first time, his eyes were clear when he woke up. "You're still here," he murmured. "Where else would I be?" He smiled weakly. "Go get some sleep. You look terrible." "Wow, charming." "I mean it." His fingers tightened around hers. "You've been here every day, every night. The nurses told me. Someone had to make sure you didn't die, after all that trouble I went through to save you." He laughed, then winced. "Don't make me laugh, everything hurts." She leaned forward, brushed the hair back from his forehead. "The FBI came by again today. They want an answer about the deal." Junho's expression sobered. The federal agents had shown up 3 days after the Red Hook confrontation, armed with evidence and ultimatums. Cooperate, provide information on rival organizations and corrupt officials, and they'd reduce his charges. He'd serve time, but not life. It was more than he deserved, and far less than he deserved, the paradox of his life. "What do you think I should do?" he asked. "I think it's not my decision to make." "But if it were?" Jasmine was quiet for a long moment. "I think you've spent your whole life trapped by choices you didn't make. Your father's death, the organization, all of it. This is a chance to choose something different, to be the person you wanted to be before duty got in the way." "The person I wanted to be is an architect, not an inmate." "You could be both, eventually." She traced circles on the back of his hand. "Your sister came by yesterday. She said she's tired of living in fear, your mother too. They want this to end. They want you to have a life outside of this." "And what about you?" His eyes searched her face. "What do you want?" "I want you to be free, really free, not just out of prison, but free from everything that's been weighing you down." She brought his hand to her lips, kissed it gently. "I'm going back to nursing school, finishing my degree, building a life I can be proud of. Whatever you decide, I'll be okay. But I'd rather build that life with you in it, whenever you're ready." Junho closed his eyes, and for a long moment she thought he'd fallen asleep again. Then he spoke, his voice barely a whisper. "I'll take the deal." She exhaled, relief flooding through her. "Yeah. 3 years, they said, maybe less with good behavior." He opened his eyes, met her gaze. "Will you wait for me?" "I told you before. I didn't take a bullet for you just to walk away when things got hard." "That's not an answer." Jasmine leaned down and kissed him, soft and sweet and full of promise. "Yes," she said against his lips. "I'll wait." 3 years later. The correctional facility in upstate New York looked different in spring, the surrounding trees green and full of life instead of bare and skeletal. Jasmine had made this drive dozens of times over the years, in every season, in every weather. She knew every mile of it by heart. But today was the last time. She parked in the visitor lot and waited, her heart hammering in her chest. She was wearing the scrubs she'd put on that morning for her shift at Mount Sinai, before leaving early with her supervisor's blessing. In her pocket was the silver ring Junho had given her before he surrendered to custody, the promise she'd worn on her right hand for 3 years. The door opened, and there he was. He looked good, healthy. The burns on his face had faded to faint scars, and he'd put on muscle from the gym time that was one of the few privileges in minimum security. But it was his expression that made her breath catch, open and hopeful and almost young in a way she'd never seen before. He walked toward her slowly, like he couldn't quite believe she was real. "Hi," she said. "Hi. So you're free." "I'm free." He stopped in front of her, close enough to touch but not touching yet. "You look different, good different, happy different." "I am happy," she smiled. "I finished my degree. I'm working at Mount Sinai. I have my own apartment. Terrence graduated top of his class at Howard, and he's starting a business with some friends." "I know, you told me, every visit." "Then why do you look so surprised?" "Because I kept waiting for you to come tell me you'd met someone else. Someone who could give you a normal life. Someone who wasn't." He gestured at himself, at the facility behind him. "This." Jasmine stepped forward, took his face in her hands. "I met someone once. He cooked me comfort food at 2 in the morning and told me I was brave. He made me feel like I wasn't just surviving anymore, like I was actually living. And I've been waiting for him to get out of prison so I can spend the rest of my life with him." Junho's eyes glistened. "Jasmine." "Take me home, Junho. We have a lot of time to make up for." He kissed her then, 3 years of longing pouring out in a single moment. Around them, other released inmates reunited with their families, laughter and tears mixing in the spring air. They drove back to Manhattan together, holding hands across the center console. Junho told her about his plans, the architecture firm that had agreed to hire him on supervised probation, the affordable housing projects he hoped to work on, the life he wanted to build. That night, they went to dinner at a small Korean restaurant in Queens. Nothing fancy, just real and perfect. "I want to marry you," Junho said, over bowls of the same stew he'd made for her in his kitchen years ago. "I know there's still a lot of work to do for both of us, but I don't want to wait anymore. I've waited long enough." Jasmine pulled the silver ring from her pocket and set it on the table between them. "Then stop waiting." He picked up the ring, looked at it, looked at her. "Is that a yes?" "It's been a yes since the night I threw myself in front of a bullet for you." She held out her left hand. "Now put it on the right finger this time." He did, and then they were both crying and laughing and holding each other in a restaurant booth, while the other diners tried not to stare. They walked through Central Park as the sun set, hands intertwined, talking about everything and nothing. At a specific bench, Junho stopped and pulled her close. "This is where I used to come when I was at Columbia," he said. "Before everything changed, I'd sit here and dream about the buildings I was going to design, the life I was going to live. He kissed her forehead. I never imagined it would include you, but I'm so glad it does. I love you, Junho. I love you too, Jasmine, more than I ever thought I could love anyone. They walked away together as the city lights flickered on around them, two people who had found each other in violence and chosen love despite everything. 1 year later. Jasmine adjusted her stethoscope and checked the time. 5 minutes until her lunch break. Perfect. She finished up with her patient, a sweet elderly woman who reminded her of her mother, and headed down to the hospital's main entrance. Junho was already there, wearing a hard hat and dusty work clothes, a grin spreading across his face when he saw her. How's the housing project? She asked, as he pulled her into a hug. Ahead of schedule. We break ground on Phase 2 next month. They found their usual bench in the small park across the street and unpacked the lunch he'd brought. Korean food, always Korean food, the recipes he'd learned from his mother and taught himself to perfect. Terrence called this morning. Jasmine said between bites. His company just landed their first major client. That's amazing. He's going to do great things. He learned from the best, she smiled. His big sister, obviously. Junho laughed. Obviously. They ate in comfortable silence for a while, watching office workers rush past, enjoying the warmth of the spring sun. Jasmine's ring caught the light, sending little sparkles dancing across their laps. We should have Mom and Naomi over for dinner this weekend, Junho said. I want to try that new recipe I found. Sounds perfect. She leaned against him, his arm wrapped around her shoulders. 4 years ago, she'd been a waitress working double shifts, barely surviving. Now she was a nurse, a wife, part of a family she'd never expected to have. Life wasn't perfect. Junho still had 2 more years of probation. The scars from his burns sometimes ached on cold days. Jasmine still had nightmares occasionally, flashes of gunfire and blood. But they had each other. They had love. They had a future they were building together, one day at a time. Hey, Junho said softly. Yeah. Thank you for saving my life, for waiting, for everything. Jasmine tilted her face up to kiss him. Thank you for being worth saving. They finished their lunch, kissed goodbye, and went back to their separate days. Her to the hospital, him to the construction site where affordable homes were rising from the ground. 2 people who had started as strangers, brought together by violence, transformed by love. And they lived, not happily ever after because life doesn't work that way, but happily enough. Happily together, happily in love. That was more than enough. Thank you for watching to the end. Please remember to click the subscribe button and make sure you like this video, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. Thank you.